come once again to discuss things.
Hi guys, you guys are ready to go ahead and get started on this? Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2, joining me today is...
I'm that Matt kid. I said my name first. I win.
Damn. Fucking speed runs, Geeky Gentlemen.
I'm a slowpoke for fun.
Damn right.
And I'm just here because I'm Steve, and that's what I do.
Is it Steve?
Yeah, man, I'm always here. I'm just always chilling, and I just don't have a lot to say all the time, so I just chill.
Exactly. Don't hurt his vibes, Ian.
Exactly, man. Well, just let me lay back, okay?
Anyway, so tonight we're talking about a discussion that's kind of been on my mind lately, ever since like WandaVision, and then that was followed up by Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it's just, I don't know, it's been something that's on my mind with the idea of fan hype and expectations and predictions not coming to fruition, and just that whole wheelhouse of things, and like, it seems that we do this all the time, and studios love that we do it because it's basically free marketing where, you know, they'll show a trailer and they'll be vague about some things, and then just a billion YouTubers put out like prediction videos, and the, you know, Twitter sphere and then the comment sphere and everything just lights up with all like the fan theories and the Reddit threads and everything about what this thing means. And then there's like a backlash to it when the thing in the movie or whatever turns out to be nothing, or turns out to be not the thing everyone predicted it would be, or God forbid if it turns out to be the thing everyone predicted it would be, then it's trash because it was so predictable. And there's like a whole reaction to it. I don't know, just the idea of fan expectations and fan predictions has been on my mind recently, particularly because WandaVision, I feel, suffered for it in a way it probably didn't deserve to the point where being basically basic MCU-ness was like a criticism of it for different reasons than it should have been. I don't know. I mean, it's been on my mind lately. Does anyone have anything they'd want to say? Anyone got a direction for us to start?
So I want to start with this bullshit world we live in where Twitter is a thing, because I hate it, and it should not exist, and all of it just needs to burn down, because Twitter, I swear to God, is scientifically, provably, objectively ruining people's minds. It just actively is, and it doesn't matter how much you claim to be above it, you are susceptible to it, and people just need to get the fuck off Twitter. I hate it so much. Anyway, I'm on Twitter, you should follow me.
Yeah, alright, mister, I'm gonna live tweet all of fucking Daredevil.
I'm not saying I'm above it, I'm just saying. But I want to start with Twitter, because Twitter is designed to, like you pointed out about my Daredevil thing, is to promote live reactions. And so you read something and you post a tweet about it, or you watch something and you live tweet. Although live tweeting is not as popular as it used to be, I don't think. But the point is, people will live react to things. And in a sense, this is neat, right? Because people have very big emotional reactions to anything they watch and see, whether it's good or bad. And that's okay. And sometimes we need that collectivity to just say, like, I have lots of thoughts and I want to pull them out into the ether so people can engage with them. The problem is, when there's this expectation to have people reciprocate this view, or
Someone's
to
echoing.
I'm echoing. Is someone echoing?
Yeah, someone's echoing.
Okay. To reciprocate this view, or for people to engage with it in a certain way. And Twitter is designed to where no matter what your intentions are, your tweet is on some level going to have like a built-in sense of bad faith. really good examples of this is just the way Twitter's language works, is that people are your followers or you follow other people. You quote tweet them in a way where your text is above theirs. Like there's just these little, like, microaggression isn't the word, but there's just like these little subtleties built into how the program is designed to just create a sort of aggressiveness and defensiveness to how things are posted. And so you get live reactions to things all the time, and you can't help but get caught up in arguments about them. And then everyone on the goddamn earth sees this because you can tag the people running or creating these shows or comics, and then they'll start to either take that stuff to heart and change what their plans are, or they'll have to like publicly start saying things to appease these people all the time, and you just get this messy thing where audience and author are so enmeshed into each other that it's just not healthy. It's not healthy from a I just want to enjoy fiction standpoint, and it's not healthy from I just want to create fiction standpoint, because you, no matter how hard you try, you can't turn that off. You're an artist, and so people are going to dictate the Twitter sphere ideas to you, even if you're not on it. Or if you're not on it, there's an opportunity for everyone else to put words in your mouth, and so there's no way out of it. And so you get these insane things like the showrunner for The Boys, who ran fucking Supernatural for 15 fucking seasons, has all this backlash because he chose to release a season weekly, which is just nonsense.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and
that's where I'm going.
It's frustrating too, because like the way that we engage with creators can also have an impact on the art that they're making, even when they're in the middle of making it. I remember there was an article, in fact I was able to Google it, I found it, when Westworld was coming out. I remember Jonathan Nolan, he was saying that, you know, he was really excited that there were so many fans getting in there and predicting things, but he would be like, oh, people on Reddit already figured out the twist in the third episode, so we're actually changing that and doing a couple reshoots right now. And that's so frustrating to me, because if you've built up I remember this George R.R. Martin panel where he's like, if you build up your whole story where the butler did it, but then someone predicts that the butler did it, so you change it so the chambermaid did it, but you've already written this whole story leading up to the twist being that the butler did it, now you have a shitty story, because you've made these changes to cater to fan expectations and to fan predictions and to try to subvert those things. So we have this weird back and forth where you've got fans being very involved in things, and they have to be involved in things to care enough to predict and to have expectations. But when you have creators trying to cater to those expectations, that's sometimes going to be, that's almost like the opposite of what WandaVision had, where the creators didn't really cater to the expectations that they had. But if you do, then you're going to be fucked as well, because you've now changed your story based on what people are expecting, not necessarily what's going to be good for the narrative that you've written. So it's the way that social media interacts with the creators of our media is weird, because now they're more viscerally aware of the expectations and predictions that we have.
Mm-hmm. I just find it interesting because there's such a sense of like entitlement in fandoms now because of the directness of the interactions that just, I don't know, it kind of floors me, that there's such like a sense of ownership of the characters, which on one hand I find very positive, that fans see themselves as not necessarily the true source, but like a truer source of who this character or this world is than whoever is put onto the book. That's empowering. It's removing the characters from their corporate overlords a little bit. I like that on some level. But then like someone will come on to a book or a movie or a show or whatever and write a character in a way that the fandom suddenly doesn't, it's not their idealized thing, or they'll just have like a bad thing happen to a character because drama, and people will get like actively offended to it, which reminds me of like soap opera stars getting letters from fans telling them that they're awful people for doing the things that their characters did in the show. It's really on that same level. And so there's like this real sense of entitlement to it that's, again, it's a double-edged sword. It's cut in both ways. But it's like creating the sense of, well, if you're not doing this, then what you're doing is garbage, and I refuse to engage with it on any other level. Like, I don't care. It's trash now. And it's I don't know, it's kind of fucked. It's kind of scary. I don't know what that means for the future of like, you know, storytelling. Like on a fundamental level, I worry about, you know, the future of fiction if you do that. Maybe I need some Morpheus in my veins to just know, oh, don't worry, the great stories will always return to their truest forms. It's just the pettiness of humans. But I don't know, man. It always just floors me a little bit. Like, this isn't... Like, this maybe gets a little more into, like, the political expectations of fans. Steve and I have joked about this, where if the character doesn't directly look at the camera and state all of my politics, that it's a bad movie. But, like, you know, I just mentioned Morpheus, so Neil Gaiman's on my mind. There's a character in the Sandman run. It's a trans woman, and they're on this like crazy adventure in the dreaming, dealing with like mythic gods and stuff, and a moon goddess sees them and says, well, I'm the goddess that protects women and you're not a woman, so you die. And like it's portrayed as a tragedy. And if we wanted to talk about like killing trans characters as a trope for tragedy, that's like a different discussion. But I saw someone get mad at Neil Gaiman and accuse him of being anti-trans because of that scene in that book. And I'm like, the fuck? I don't know how to react to that. Just be like, the fuck? And it confuses and scares me. I don't really know a ton about Neil Gaiman's personal life, but that take was very baffling to me. Alfie, you've been quiet.
Yeah, well, basically, you guys are spitting straight facts, as the kids would say. It's so weird. It isn't a new phenomenon. Since the beginning of understanding any media, right? The thing of like, you'd imagine like people in Shakespeare's theaters, like the Royal Globe, and just watching, they'd be like talking amongst themselves, like, oh, this is where this must happen. It's like, oh, I can't believe it. Romeo and Juliet didn't get together. This is ridiculous. It's such a thing. Like, just how people as humans react to. We like to be right. We like to feel that we understand where something is going, and when a piece of media doesn't conform to that, either just by you having different predictions or because it knows it's intentionally trying to subvert them, people can get kind of hostile with it because they don't initially like dealing with those emotions that art makes them feel. But definitely, to go to Steve's point, the invention of social media and the invention of Twitter has kind of compounded this so much. YouTube as well, I think, has a big part to play in this. And the example I'll use is Star Wars, because I think that's the easiest one for like anyone listening just to grasp. Yeah, yeah, that right. But like, the reason why Star Wars is such an example of fan entitlement and fan expectations is because not even the Snoke thing, like the Holdo maneuver, right?
Mm-hmm.
People were mad that Rian Johnson tried to add something new to the Star Wars lore because it hadn't been shown before. And like, the idea that you can't add anything new to a mythology because no one else has thought of that before, so therefore it must be wrong. the abhorrent to like innovation, I think it all comes down. The fact that you can't predict a movie's plot just because you've spent hours on a wiki thread People don't like that. People
Well, and-
like to think that they can do that and they can have that their fandom is being rewarded in a way where now they become like smarter than other people. That they become like gods of like, well, I know where this is going because I've read this or I've done this, so I know the only possible scenarios this can end up in. And if it doesn't conform to that, then it's instantly bad because it doesn't match these things, rather than this is how storytelling works.
And I mean, like,
One caveat to the Holdo thing is also that people would have been more okay with it if a woman in pink hair who was telling all the men what to do wasn't the one doing it. And I think I love Last Jedi. I think Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie. It's the best franchise movie we've done in like the last century. Honestly, it's fantastic. And it's not a particularly feminist movie. Like I wouldn't. You could theoretically break it down and be like, here's how Rian Johnson understands the agency of women throughout that movie and why his way of understanding Rey and Holdo and Rose are all really interesting and intricate. But it is not on its face a movie about feminist things or about women or womanhood or any of that stuff. But the second a character who happened to be a woman was the one giving the orders and doing something cool is when everyone just fucking raged. And I mean, this is the same thing with Rey too, where like it doesn't matter how much of what Rey does comes from other things that we've already established and seen before, specifically from male characters. It's that she's a woman that's the problem. And so the expectations are interesting because they are, in a sense, trying to outsmart or predict the plot, which is probably the worst way to watch anything. But they're not only that, but they're also like baking in opinions and ideas about how this fiction relates to their world from just decades of consuming something in a very similar vein, where like you see the Star Wars movies are great and I love them, but they do fall into the fandom camps. For a very, very long time, female Star Wars fans had trouble getting into that fandom, that female characters, like every other franchise, had trouble getting decent representation. And that's just, it's a history thing. It's fine. You know, we're trying to move past it. I wouldn't say a Star Wars book is bad just because it does something shitty to a female character. It's a product of history and we just have to approach it that way. But you spend enough time consuming that, and your expectation becomes that this is how it must be represented all the time. And it doesn't matter whether or not it's pre-established. It doesn't matter whether or not it's not adding something new to the canon or not. What matters is it doesn't feel familiar in this very specific, almost aesthetic way. And people create these expectations partly because of what they consume, but also because, and I've said this before, it's because that's what they were trained to expect. They were trained to expect male characters doing these things. They were trained to expect female characters in these kinds of roles. And when you get rid of that, even if it's not on purpose, people get mad.
Mm-hmm. I just want to backtrack real quick to something Alfie was saying, because it made me think of this. And, like, what an audience is expecting is a gift to a writer. You know, like, just it's a great tool in your toolkit to create something and then to create something that has expectations and then to subvert those expectations. You know, I remember, like, this, it's so crazy that this has stuck with me for as long as it has. My dad and I went on a road trip when I was in, like, middle school. We went to Vegas. We saw Lance Burton's Magic Act in Vegas. And there was this moment in the act where there's a bunch of fucking ducks on stage, and they're walking around the stage free, you know, not in cages, just fucking ducks on the stage. And he's over on the other side of the stage doing something, and he says it in the middle of the act. He goes, "Notice how everyone in the audience is looking at the ducks. That's great. It's called misdirection." And then he just did a thing. And I don't even remember what the fucking trick was because I was too busy looking at the fucking ducks. But, like, literally, as a writer, if you have the ability to know, like, factually what your audience is expecting from a thing, then that's a gift to you to be able to draw their attention by giving them, like, a taste of that, by hinting at that thing, and then to do something with that intention, do something with that expectation. whether it be pay it off or whether it be subvert it or what have you. And so the idea that we're getting to a point where if you don't do exactly what I'm expecting you to do, then it's bad. And if you do exactly what I'm expecting you to do, then this movie was predictable. And that's even worse. And I'm like, you either want to be right or you don't. There's no room for a middle ground here. And that's a problem. I mean, I guess on some level, if someone told me, oh, I was kind of into this movie because it was really, going to a place I expected it to go, and I was really liking that, and then it did something so different that I just couldn't stick with it. Because that's a complaint, to bring it up again, that's a complaint about Last Jedi that I have heard. And I don't agree with it, but, at least I comprehend that. The Snoke thing comes to mind of, oh, they built Snoke up to be, this huge thing, and then it turns out he's not important at all. I'm like, yeah, that's the best part. He's, a fucking nothing, and it's just about these characters. But I comprehend that people were bothered by that to some level, and I can at least accept that.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of the, because you brought this up as an example, but the WandaVision thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, the big standout there is Quicksilver. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who cast Evan Peters. They knew what they were doing. They knew the expectations that were going to come saddled with that casting. Just the very nature of just by having him play that character in that show, they knew that there was going to be fan expectation, fan discussion about, is it going to be a multiverse thing? Is this Quicksilver from the X-Men universe? Is this, that, and the other? And it turns out to not be any of those things. They subvert it entirely, and they're like, no, he's just some fucking guy. And like that or hate that, they knew what they were doing, and so they're playing on those expectations not just as a way to tell a story, but you're also kind of looking at this from a marketing point of view. They're saying we have this show that's releasing weekly, and the people who are doing the money decisions, I don't know how concerned they are with the artistic integrity of let's set something up and then, narratively do something interesting with it. They just care of, hey, we put Evan Peters in this. That's going to be a cliffhanger. People are not going to be able to shut up about our show for weeks on end. We're going to keep this going and keep people talking about oh, what's this going to turn out to be? What's this going to turn out to be? And then when we eventually don't really do what they're expecting with it, I would be surprised if any of them were surprised that people were upset or pissed off or whatever. Because I mean, when you're a creative or when you're making those types of decisions, the types of expectations that are going to come with those things. So I'm always kind of surprised whenever I see people surprised that people had that reaction to Quicksilver turning out to be kind of a red herring in that show.
I think it also, to kind of connect some of these points here, I think it's also because there's a tendency with the kinds of fiction that we consume to have sort of very what's the word? Just very consistent patterns of how they do these things, where on a certain level, the Arrowverse shows have gotten into this rut over the last 10 years where they move at such a quick pace that you get certain revelations so quickly, and they tend to escalate so fast, and seasons tend to have a very sort of clear trajectory of how preposterous they will continue to go. And at first it's kind of fine, you get to the first half of Arrow season 1, and it turns out, oh shit, Tommy's dad is the Dark Archer? What does this mean? And you hold that over until the end of the season. And then you get to season 2, and again it's similar, oh shit, Slade's alive. But then, after that, you get to seasons of that show where the big bad reveals, like Ra's al Ghul, come quicker, and then the heel turns and the twists become packed in so heavily towards the end that you spend so much of your time just feeling like you're playing catch up with the show. And doing it on a weekly basis makes you not notice it as much versus if you were binge watching it. And so something like WandaVision is interesting to me because you're right, they are playing with those expectations, but they're also kind of caught in the Marvel formula in a similar way, where you had a solid string of like 6 episodes just doing the thing to varying degrees of success. And then you get to episode 7 and you drop these bombs about Wanda and Agatha Harkness and the White Vision. And then you get to the episode 8 in the finale, or 9, or however many episodes it was, I don't fucking know. You get to the last episode, and they have to wrap up every single twist and turn and plot point they possibly can, and set so many beats up for sequel payoffs. And part of the reason I think people felt maybe disappointed in that finale wasn't because there wasn't an adequate number of twists and turns. It's that they were so ingrained to get twists and turns on a regular basis, and then that show just ends with them so flatly, and you don't have answers that are going to resolve for them for at least another year or two. And people just want the instant gratification. They want the plot to be predictable. They want things to be answered, and they want it to live up to the hype that they've gotten it to, and they want it right now. And if they can't get it right now, it's automatically disappointing. It doesn't matter what they do with it in Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. I didn't get my answer in this episode.
Yeah. The yin cough of doom is an expectation that we've all been very trained to have. The thing with the X-Men thing, I think, is interesting because we've talked a lot about like fan expectations and like how writers use them, but I definitely think something to consider that Matt brought up is that the companies themselves encourage it because they know that's almost how twists are almost how we market things now, which is really strange. Like the whole idea of like
I blame M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, but like even like the idea of, oh, the show's okay, just stick with it till you get to this part and everything changes. Like I think the most recently thing that was what was with Invincible, but like that's how like whenever you get people like advertising like their shows, like Paul Bettany made a joke of it. It's like, oh, I worked with the actor who was the most respected person I've always wanted to work with, and everyone was like, oh, who does he mean? Does he mean like Ian McKellen? Is Magneto gonna show up or something like that? Really, he just meant himself. But like,
showrunner was like, he dug his own grave on that one. I ain't helping this guy.
But like, there's like this whole thing with that of he's the actor saying that I'm making a joke of it, but like the Marvel themselves and stuff like that will always post, and it's almost I think because of the idea of like the post-credit scene and everything now, we almost don't watch media to have the media. In a world where everything gets a second season, or everything is this long-running thing, or everything is setting up for payoffs that never happen, we're just trained to like, okay, but what's this leading to? How many times have I seen people say, like, well, I didn't really like it because it was kind of pointless, it was kind of filler, like it didn't really mean anything. It's like this character had an emotional journey where it changed their lives forever. Yeah, but like it didn't really set anything up. So like, everyone has seen that conversation at least one time, and it's kind of terrifying that we've focused so much now on plot points and plot developments as expectations, as if it was reading off a wiki page, as if we were reading stories for bullet points. People won't even read like comic book stories or stuff like that. They'll see, oh, Batman and Catwoman are getting married, and they haven't read any of Tom King's run. Batman and Catwoman don't get married in issue 50. This is a disgrace. They've shat on the gospel. They've pissed on everything. Batman issue, the final issue of Tom King's run comes out. Oh yeah, Batman and Catwoman did get married. They are in fact married. They just did a civil partnership. They didn't do it in a courtroom. Does anyone say that? No, because they don't fucking read it, and that's not something you can summarize in a bullet point. That's something you have to explain in issue, that this is why they consider themselves a husband and wife now. But no one cares, because you can't plot point it. And stuff like that gets missed so much, and it's such a disservice. I'm
going to really quick just interject. The internet does not deserve Tom King, and that is all I will say on this matter.
You cut out for me, what?
Oh, I just said the internet does not deserve Tom King, and that's all I'll say on this matter.
Gotcha. I figured that. I mean, honestly, any given scenario, any given conversation, you could say that, and I'd be like, yeah, that's fair.
Matt, you should do a Tom King cosplay for like Halloween or
Right?
Con.
Exactly. Good. It's funny. Yeah, I think corporations setting up expectations is something that always gets me, and that's particularly true in the realms of kind of geekdom that I'm a little bit more versed in. I'm thinking specifically in like the gaming community, where like the way that pre-orders and hype work, you're basically sold something that you like. The gaming industry wants you to purchase something you haven't even gotten to see yet, and so you can go back at like Aliens, Colonial Marines, Mass Effect 3, Mighty Number 9, Cyberpunk, No Man's Sky, like all these games that were advertised as something that when they came out, they either were not what they were advertised to be, or they were not quite to the caliber of what everyone built up in their head for them. Like Mighty Number 9, solid enough game, but not what everyone had built up in their minds for it to be. Same thing with Ukulele. So like there's this weird intersection of fans going way too far with their own expectations, and the companies involved with the release of the product stoking the flames themselves, and kind of finding where those two intersections meet. And I mean, trying to assign blame is kind of useless, because at the end of the day, you just kind of have to learn not to buy into hype for things you've not seen. But there is sort of a shared responsibility when it comes to expectations, because as a consumer, you can only go off of what's been presented to you. And so if you've been presented a certain thing and you go into that media and it's something entirely different, or it's not what you were expecting, there's an adjustment that has to take place there. And whether or not you're able to make that adjustment can oftentimes be the deciding factor of whether or not you think something is going to be good or bad. But of course, sometimes things are shitty and you don't expect them to be, and that can happen.
Cyberpunk 2077.
Still so pissed about Cyberpunk 2077. So fucking pissed about it.
I don't even know.
Check this out.
I don't even know like a fucking thing about the game. I find it so like I'm immersed in the memeage of the like radical disappointment in that game.
Well, it's so like this is like you take a company that has made like really one good game. They've made The Witcher 3. Like they've made one good game and they've made one okay game, which was The Witcher 2. And so and CD Projekt Red is a company that has always said the right stuff. They've always, like, in their press releases talked about, we leave greed to the bigger corporations because we're better than that. So like they've built themselves up in the minds of people, almost like how Zack Snyder had like that like kind of grouping of fan love behind him, where it's like, we love Zack Snyder, so whatever the Snyder cut is, we are going to love it. And so that's exactly what happened with CD Projekt Red. We love CD Projekt Red. They made a game we really like, and they say the right things on Twitter. So no matter what they put out, we're gonna love it. So Cyberpunk comes out review-wise, like reviews for Cyberpunk start coming out, people shit all the fuck over it. Reviewers get sent death threats. One reviewer said that a scene in the game triggered an epileptic seizure for her, and in response to her saying that about a game that none of them had played yet, several gamers sent her seizure-inducing videos in her DMs. And there's this level of like rabid fan love and expectation for these things that haven't even come out yet. Then the game comes out and everyone realizes they were a bunch of fucking morons because it sucks ass. And it's an amazing little story arc that happens, and it happens all the time in the gaming world, and no one ever fucking learns their goddamn lesson. And so this cycle of like hype and expectation followed by tremendous downfall and hatred is amusing to me, because sometimes the things that get built up and then hated do truly deserve it because they were bad products that were rushed out by lies, like Aliens, Colonial Marines. But sometimes it's like Yooka-Laylee, where it's like, this is not a bad video game at all, but the fan expectation is so high that when it comes out and it's not the second coming of Christ, everyone loses their fucking minds.
It's also funny how with video games, the expectations are built and people still somehow seem to have different expectations. So my favorite example is Pokemon.
Yeah.
Because Pokemon is a consistent franchise from beginning to end. We can say all this shit about their production history throughout the years and certain games being better than others, yada yada yada. But Pokemon is Pokemon. You know what you're getting. It's probably the most consistent gaming franchise I've ever played. And every goddamn time a game comes out, people are always expecting it to break the mold, even though no one has ever said it's going to break the mold, and then they're disappointed by it, and they review bomb it, or they talk about how much it sucks, how things used to be better, and then like 3 years later a new game comes out and they're like, oh, the other one was better than this. And it's just every single time it's like they reset the expectations that no one hyped up.
Mm-hmm. And then you have like the whole Sonic cycle for every time a new Sonic game comes out, and it's very similar to me. Actually, it's very different because Sonic is wildly non-consistent. But there are these franchises that do have these clearly repetitive cycles. Yeah, Pokemon's an interesting one to me, because I know with like Sword and Shield there was a lot of expectation there, and I can kind of understand that one, because we're jumping from handhelds to something that is technically a home console for like the first time ever in the mainline series. You know, we haven't done a Pokemon RPG on console since like Coliseum, so I can totally understand, and I'm in the camp that would like Game Freak to actually take a couple years off and come back with something a little bit fresher personally. But they haven't said they're going to do that, so I'm not going in with the expectations that they're going to do that. I just think it would be cool if they did. But I can't judge this new Pokemon game to those standards because they haven't said that that's what they're trying to do. So yeah, I'm with you there.
Pokemon has gone into shit. Hey.
I'm not necessarily saying I think the quality has stayed consistent, but I can see both sides.
The interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of problems with Sword and Shield, but I just think it's funny that people expect Sword and Shield, or literally any Pokemon game ever, every time a new Pokemon game comes out, it's like they're expecting it to be. I'm trying to think of an example of where the second game blows the first one out of the water, and like Modern Warfare. That's my go-to example, which is a really dumb one. But like the Call of Duty franchise exists, and then there's Modern Warfare, and the whole thing just becomes new and different, and it gets completely blown away. And it's like every time a Pokemon game is released, everyone's expecting it to be Modern Warfare for Pokemon. And it just never is, and no one said it's going to be, and I don't understand why people keep thinking it.
Pikachu, you've landed 5 successful hits. Call in an airstrike.
Pikachu is M16.
Pokemon
The numbers, Ash. What do the numbers mean? Press off. We're at Pika Pika. Who are you people? That's really good. All right. In games, I think it's interesting because fan expectations for games, I think, are a little bit more grounded. There's a little bit more of a justification to expecting the lessons to be learned from when it comes to like game mechanics, but that's hardware. It's mathematics. We've seen you doing this before. You've coded this. Next time you won't have to. Once you've made an engine, it's a lot easier than having to do that.
Unless you're Sonic, in which case you make an engine and you get 3 games where you finally get it working perfectly, and then you abandon it and make a new engine.
But like that's a special kind of beast. Generally speaking, for sane video game companies, few as they are, that's normally the expectation. Whereas comparing that to something like, even just within the games themselves, to like story-wise, right? I think is a lot different, because that's not learning stories and how we write things can be very different for very different needs. You can have a sequel to a game. Almost to use your example, Steve, with like Call of Duty, that can be, they're not very tackling different themes of war. That's a big like thing to cover, and so while one may be more action packed and more thing, to cover another aspect of what it means to be in war, you may go for a different tone entirely, and that requires different strengths. You're not necessarily learning from the past experience when you're telling a different type of story. You're more so flexing a different muscle. Whereas with video games, you're genuinely learning all the time. Again, the game development is incredibly hard, and I don't want to misjudge that. There's more of a foundation as a logical progression that these should be continuously getting better compared to like movies or like comic books or something like that. Like that's just something different goals there than for a video game. I feel like
there's a good example here, like you look at like Mass Effect 3, for example. Like that was a game. I almost want to compare Mass Effect 3 to BioShock Infinite in a weird way, because like when you go from BioShock to BioShock Infinite, you're not necessarily going from a good story to a bad story. You're going from a story that has a certain set of themes to BioShock Infinite, which, while it shares the namesake, it is now dealing with entirely new themes. It's dealing with new ideas. But because it's not what people were expecting after BioShock 1, it's bad because they're not getting what they got from BioShock 1. Now, I'm not saying Infinite's fantastic, but it is trying to do different things. So you can't judge it based on, well, it's not exploring the themes that the first BioShock was exploring, because it's not trying to. It's trying to do something different. But then you look at like Mass Effect 3, and Mass Effect 3 is interesting because that's a game where the story plays out in a way that's directly contrary to what you're expecting it to, based purely on the trajectory of the first two games. And that was a situation where they actually ended up releasing it sooner than they wanted to, and there's a whole lot going on in that. But I mean, I think that going from sequel to sequel or going from game to game and looking at it story-wise, there are definitely situations where expectations are dashed because the game's trying to do something different, and then there are situations where expectations are dashed because it legitimately doesn't match up to what the kind of concept of the overall trilogy was going to be. So there are kind of differing circumstances. It just kind of depends from franchise to franchise and release to release.
To go back a little bit to what you were saying before about the fact that both parties here are responsible, is that you almost feel bad for anyone who's trying to do anything, because you can't not set fan expectations, especially when you're releasing sequels or you're spending years and years developing a video game, where you have to try to control the spin a little bit, but you know from the second you start doing that people are going to spin it out of control. And so I just wonder, like, what's the right balance of we don't want to say anything versus we're going to just tell you everything, and finding that middle ground of here's just the reasonable amount of expectations you can have that we can try to subvert on a certain level consciously and not on another level. There are plenty of cases where movie trailers are designed to intentionally mislead you. And that's not a problem, I don't think. The problem only becomes when people don't see that they were intentionally misled, and so they think that what they're watching is somehow not what they... is something that they either doesn't make sense or can't be justified. And I don't know if I've ever seen a case where the expectations and the response kind of met, or the studio was able to control the expectations. The closest I could even think is like when something comes out with a lot of hype and people are going to love it no matter what, like the first Avengers movie or Endgame, where I don't think it really mattered what anyone said. People were going to watch it no matter what, and they were going to be the highest grossing movies of all time, and they were. Or Zack Snyder's Justice League, where it didn't really matter what it was, people were going to love it. But those like rare exceptions aside, I can't think of an example of where the studio said, this is how we lay the groundwork, and then it just worked.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think of like, I mean, it would be weird, right? If someone came out of the movie and was like, it satisfied everything I was waiting for. It was perfectly adequate to what I was promised. You know, like I mean, sometimes people are really, oh, it was everything I'd hoped it'd be, but like, you know, you rarely get it satisfied every expectation I had.
I feel like I've had that experience. It's just weird because I feel like when I have that experience, it seems like it doesn't gel with the fandom overall. Mortal Kombat's a good example of this for me, where I feel like I kept up with the production of that movie pretty hard. I like those video games. I'm very nostalgic for them. I watched that movie and I came away thinking this is exactly what I expected, and this was fine. It was fun in the places that I thought it was going to be fun. It was bland in the places I knew it was going to be bland. I was not promised more or less than this, and everyone just hated it.
I think that's actually a really good point. I think the thing you had in there where you said this was bland in the places I figured it was going to be bland. I think that's exactly what, because I feel the exact same way about Mortal Kombat as you. Like, I went into that movie, I didn't expect it to be perfect. I expected it to be a fun movie about people getting fucked up, and that's what it was. And so like, it's you almost have to kind of change your own expectations. I mean, I'm trying to think of movies or just things that I've had where like I went in with definitely a heavy set of expectations and came out satisfied. A lot of it is like recommendations. Like, people kept saying, dude, go watch Knives Out, and I finally did, and I was like, oh, that was fucking great. Or
see, that doesn't work on me. People tell me, oh, you gotta watch this thing, you gotta watch this thing, you gotta watch this thing. I'm like, alright, fine, I'll watch it. Fucking, you know what I did this with? Mandalorian. Fucking 2 years. Oh, it's so good. It's the best thing ever. Oh, it's so fucking good. And I watched it. Like, I came into work after I watched it, and one guy I work with, huge Star Wars fan. It's like the thing that, you know, that's what we talk about whenever we see each other at work is Star Wars. I was like, oh, finally watched Mandalorian. He goes, oh yeah, what'd you think? I'm like, it was all right. He's like, what? Like, he was so. He was so disappointed. I'm like, no, it was fine. Like, I liked it. It was adequate. He's just like, it was the most amazing thing ever. I'm like, yeah, that's what everyone said. Certainly, I just, it's just okay.
I keep seeing these Twitter posts lately where people are getting tired of the like, movies and like things that come out either need to be the best thing ever or they need to be garbage.
I mean, like, goddamn, we've been talking about this on Geeky Gentlemen for like at least 10 years, Steve. Where it's just like, can people just be okay with things just being okay? Like, by definition, not everything can be amazing, and also by definition, not everything can be fucking garbage. Some things necessitate being just okay, and that's okay.
Look, all I can tell you here is when I emoji react to something, I only have the option to do my thumb up and my thumb down. I cannot give you varying degrees of thumb, therefore I only have two opinions.
Yeah, I don't really love Captain Marvel, but I did not go into Captain Marvel expecting it to like be my new favorite MCU movie. And I feel like that's almost how people go into like every MCU movie. Like, they go into it and they expect it to be their new best favorite awesome blow their mind MCU movie, and I'm just like, that's just not going to happen. Like, not all of them are going to be that quality, and not all of them are going to appeal to you in that way. And so it's just like, I am a little bit tired of people setting their own expectations in fucking stupid ass ways.
Okay. After Ian finishes his stroke over that, I guess, are there any...
Sorry, I just had a British moment.
Drown in it! Anyway, once we're going, do you guys have any examples of, like, stuff that you legitimately expected
this fucking bitch just I made him take over, and what does he do? He tries to fucking pass the buck and do a round robin. You fucking little shit. I expected more from you, Alfie.
I'll go first then. Daddy will go first if you need me to hold your hand this much. But, you know, Ian, I was just subverting your expectation. For me, something that I was going into, I actually did feel like, oh man, this would have been bummed. I think the biggest one would be Arkham Knight is the one that I had the most like, this is gonna deal with this because they set this up in the and again I was younger when that came out. I was like 2 or something probably, judging by everyone else's age. But like when we were doing that, when Arkham Knight came out after C, like Joker's dead, and they set up like Hush, and like even back then, as a 2-year-old, I didn't expect anything from Hush because Hush always sucked. But like they had like this thing with maybe Rachel come back, or maybe something with Damien, or will we do like a Batman Beyond thing, or any of these things. And like I'm one of the people who actually do like Knight. It's my favorite of the series, but it definitely did feel the most like we're not gonna use any of that Dini setup because Paul Dini isn't writing Arkham Knight anymore, so we're just going completely with something new. And I liked a lot of what they did, but I still think it was a little bit of like, there was some cool concepts set up here that you could have used, that kind of just got dropped. So that's probably the biggest example I can think of off the top of my head.
I would actually agree with that, and it's so funny because like, so I'm gonna tell a brief little anecdote. So like, Arkham Knight came out when my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, Carly, was doing a 7-month Disney college program. So she was in Florida, I was in Ohio, and we hadn't seen each other in months. We would just be texting and things like that. I did not have a PS4 at the time. She had an Xbox One, and we were like so excited because we're going to each buy copies of Arkham Knight, and we're gonna get on like chat, and we're gonna like do a Skype call while we're both playing Arkham Knight and like react to it together, and it's gonna be so fun. She went to a GameStop with one of her roommates in the Disney college program. She was dressed as Scarecrow, and her roommate dressed up as the Riddler. And cool. I went to a GameStop wearing a Batman t-shirt, a Batman mask, and a cape. And they let me cut to the front of the line because of it, because it was me and one other dude dressed as Batman, and they let us cut to the front of the line. So I bought like the Arkham Knight limited edition PS4 with the game. We like get back and like we start playing. We get on the call. We start playing all night, and I can like viscerally remember when I started to go, oh no, this is not gonna be good. And so that's a good one for me as well. I mean, but see, like Alfie and I seem to disagree on things, because for me, seeing Rise of Skywalker in theaters was such a fucking like surreal ass disappointment experience. And I know that Alfie disagrees with that, but like that would be probably the most recent one for me that I can think of, that I'm just like sitting there in the theater just being like, oh God.
It's not your power, Ray. It's his power.
See, with Rise of Skywalker, because I'm with you, Matt, I do not like that movie one bit. But
you've all made your point.
With Rise of Skywalker, after the reaction to Last Jedi, I was not expecting anything of that movie. So I'm like, yeah, if it sucks, I knew it, and if it's good, I'll be pleasantly surprised. And it sucked, so that's fine. But I think the bigger one for me was probably Endgame, because
you were like the biggest MCU stan before Endgame, and like I remember talking with you after Infinity War. You're like, oh God, the characterization for Thanos, it was so good. I loved everything about Infinity War. The ending, it fucking broke me. Oh man, I can't wait for what's next. Endgame comes out and Steve's suddenly like, the MCU was a mistake.
You're right though. You're right. That's the thing, is that I saw Infinity War, and like all of the memes came out of Infinity War, where it's just like the kind of like broken, sad, decrepit person after the end of that movie because they don't know what to do with their life, and I was just so amped after watching that. And then Endgame comes out, and I had like a very particular set of expectations. I like the Russos. I like Marcus and McFeely. I like the place that everyone was left in at the time. And I was very, very hyped for Endgame. I got tickets for the very first showing in my town months ahead of time when I could. And I saw it all by myself because, I mean, usually at that point in college I'd watch movies with people, but I didn't want to wait because I was just so excited for this movie. And then I get to the end of this 3 hour and 1 minute slog, and they used to make those jokes where, like, it's the 1 minute tacked on so you can sit in the theater and cry. And, you know, yeah, you do need to sit in the theater and cry because it's so fucking bad. And it's not even a matter of, like, I had particular ideas for how I think this movie should have gone. I was very receptive to whatever they wanted to do at that point. Ian's right, I was very much a hardcore MCU stan, and I loved basically all of the movies with varying degrees of success.
Except for Ant-Man.
Yeah, Ant-Man's not great. Ant-Man 2, though, Ant-Man 2 still slaps. But you get to Endgame, and it did all of these things that were not only against expectations, but were just against, like, coherent, sentient storytelling, like, rules, to the point where it just became absurd to me. And Alfie and I were talking about this before, but you spend an entire 2.5 hour movie, which, by the way, 2.5 hours is too fucking long for superhero movies. I'm sorry, but it is. You spend a 2.5 hour movie making Thanos your protagonist, and you get inside of his head and you learn everything about him, and you get a very complex view of this is who this person is. And then you get to Endgame, and the enemy you face at the end of the gate is not the one you've been fighting this entire time. It's a version of him from the past that has no context for what he's doing in this moment. That scene where he tells Scarlet Witch, I don't even know who you are, that's not funny. That, to me, just says this was the dumbest possible thing you could have done with Thanos, and boy, did you do it. You took every little thing anyone could expect out of just basic screenwriting, and you threw it out the window to get this little bitty bit in where he makes a joke about not knowing who Scarlet Witch is. And I can't. Endgame made me not have fun with the Marvel movies anymore, and I will never forgive it.
Damn. Like, that's so crazy to me that, like, you were that shook by Endgame. Like, it's funny because you're certainly not the only one. Endgame, I think, really soured a lot of people on the MCU, and I think you're just the one who's really good at articulating why. Like, I've really noticed a huge trend post Endgame that a lot of people kind of came away like that. Because it used to be it was impossible to get away from Marvel movie hype, and you know me, for years I was like, yeah, I mean, they're good, they're fine, I like them, but they're not, like, you know, groundbreaking great films every year. You know, some of them are better than others. And, you know, getting into Infinity War and stuff, I'm like, all right, you know, I'm starting, like, Black Panther, I'm starting to really get onto the MCU hype train. And then Endgame comes out, I'm like, yeah, I guess it was fine, it was okay. It's, you know, I liked some of the bits in it. There was cool things. We got Professor Hulk, that was neat. Like, I liked, you know, it was okay, but yeah, it kind of returned me back to where I was. So my opinions on the Marvel movies have remained mildly consistent with a couple upticks every so often. So I don't know. God, I'm sitting here the whole time you guys are talking about stuff, and I'm trying to think of one. And I'm like, I'm sure I've got one, but I guess I'm just really good at managing my expectations and taking a thing for what it is going to be. I guess if it happens to me, it probably happens the most with comics. That the only thing that's really occurring to me right now is G. Willow Wilson's semi-run on Wonder Woman. Because in Rebirth starts up and Rucka's on the book, and he does like 2 years, and then he's done, and then fucking Williamson or whatever, Robinson. I can never remember his name, and I'm better off for it. Robinson takes over, and I'm told he's allowed to write the worst comics ever because he wrote one good comic, and I just have kind of accepted it. Robinson takes over for like 2 fucking years, and we're talking 2 years of double issues too, so it's painful. But fucking 2 years of Robinson, and he's got, you know, Wonder Woman's brother Jason, and fucking just it's terrible. And then G. Willow Wilson, the kind of like, you know, the really kind of famous Marvel writer for writing Miss Marvel, this really like big popular new character that pisses off all the right people. Like, she checks all the boxes for me. She gets announced, she's coming over to DC, and she's gonna write a Wonder Woman run. And I'm like, yes, I am here for it. Let's go. And it's fine. It's not like the worst thing. I mean, it's certainly an improvement over Robinson, but like in between Robinson and her, we just get a couple issues of Steven Orlando writing Wonder Woman. I'm like, this is really fucking good, guys. And then Wilson's run just kind of fizzles out, and not much really comes of the story she told on it. And then Orlando comes back on it. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, Steven Orlando. He fucking kicked it out of the park with Wonder Woman. So I guess that's the only one that like is coming to mind for me right now. Like I've been sitting here trying to think of stuff that kind of let me down, and that's the only one that comes to mind right now. But it's more just like, it wasn't as good as it could have been, but it was still an improvement over what I was getting at the time.
As far as comics go, Alfie knows my pain of how fucking hyped I was for Tom Taylor on Nightwing. And I read the first issue, I'm like, yes, this is the best Nightwing comic we've had in fucking decades. And then issue 2 comes out, and I'm like, oh no, we're back to this.
So fast. It was so, because like, Steve was in the group chat with me, and he's like, Alfie, why do you? Because we're both just gagging for Dick. Like, you give us good Dick, me and Steve will go crazy for it. We will tell everyone else. We will recommend your Dick to anyone. We will shove your Dick ourselves down someone else's throat. That's how much we just need good top tier Dick. We're starving for it. And like, this Dick comes out, and this Dick's looking good. This looks looking crisp, clean. The lines are perfect. Really nice color to it. It's like everything about this Dick is just looking like right. But I'm kind of like, okay, with Tom Taylor, you know, he's kind of like, we'll see. So we get this Dick, right? And like, Steve, I guess, just like had a couple of drinks that night, was kind of already a little bit loosened up, so it went in a little bit easier. But I was already seeing the signs that maybe this is a Dick you really want to let inside your house. Because, like, again, we had like this back and forth about it, where like Steve was like, all right, yeah, I see your point, but like I think it's going to be going somewhere. I think there's going to be a lot of good points that we're building up. And it's like, well, you know, okay, I guess. But issue 2 comes out, and Steve realizes just how flaccid it really was. I'll stop with the crude analogies on that one, but like, yeah, it was so.
Please don't stop with the crude analogies. I'm really enjoying the crude analogies.
I'm losing it over here. So good. I'm a child.
I really didn't. I really didn't know what to say to you about what you were doing. Like, it was such a, there was such a push for him, and I think in the long term it's still going to work out good, because even if we're not enjoying the book ourselves, it is still a sign that they are willing to put bigger names, and it's selling well, and like the casual, like the normies, as if I'm gonna sound super elitist, they're enjoying the Dick, but like, it was just a case of, I don't know. Steve, when you went back, have you like read the first issue since you got disappointed with the second?
Not since I've read the second. I read the first issue 2 or 3 times as it came out, but I have not read the first issue since reading the second one, no.
Because I would be curious if like it informs the things I was talking about with the first one. Because a lot of the things that you came up that we agreed on were things which I was already kind of seeing, like, oh, okay, the Alfred thing, this is kind of just fluff, there's not really much to it. And I wonder if maybe that's an example of, like, expectations can be a thing where it's very tied to taste. Like, personal expectations and fandom expectations are very different. Because, Steve, like, you're the most, well, like, contrarian motherfucker, like, I know, aside from myself. And I pride myself on my contrarian attitude. But like, you're not one to like get swept up in the hype for something unless it's something you're very personally invested in. Ian, you're the same with that. Me and Matt as well. I think basically everyone here's got very like outside the. We're kind of special. We're kind of, you know, free thinkers, mavericks.
We're just better than you know. You listening to this specifically.
Yeah, the fifth dimensional geeky council and all that. But the point I guess I'm trying to get there is like, do you guys think personal expectations are something that is healthy and fine to be disappointed with? It's more so mass wave fandom hive mind expectations we need to kind of push back on.
I mean, I feel like one comes from the other, though, right? Like, it's hard not to eventually somehow be disappointed or kind of let down by a thing. Like, it happens. I thought about it a little more. Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run. Really, really got into it. It's the thing that made me a Green Lantern fan. I got into it before it was done. Like a lot of people, we got to like the end of Blackest Night. The thing had been building to forever and ever, and like since the beginning of the run, it had all been building to Blackest Night. Blackest Night ends with a fucking white lantern. It's like, okay, so the story keeps building. It's kind of a letdown though, but all right, we'll keep going. And then just like, by the time it gets to it, by the time you get into like New 52 of that run, it gets so ridiculous because like stories don't even end anymore. They just become the next story. And the one that reminds me so much of that was there's the story arc called War of the Green Lanterns, and it doesn't even get to end because the last chapter of that saga is just the beginning. Like everyone's teleported off Oa back to Earth because the first lantern has arrived. And it's like, well, what the fuck? That's not a satisfying conclusion. It's not even a story at that point. It's just the fucking prologue to the other thing. It's very, very... Like, that's probably the one I was the most disappointed by, because there's still, like, good stuff in that run, even at the end. But, man, that run, like, that whole run is kind of the legendary run on Green Lantern, and it really does kind of fizzle out by the end of it all. Oops. So yeah, but like, right though, when we talk about wider expectation versus personal expectation, well, it's because a lot of people come away with the same personal expectation and start talking to each other and theorizing about it. And I can't help but feel like a lot of this is due to the fact that media discussion has become more widespread because of social media, no matter what, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, maybe. I don't know what people do on there. Discord. No one fucking uses Skype anymore. So like, but the discussion around media and about media has become so much more widespread. So like the idea of talking in the comic shop and theorizing what was going to happen in this Superman arc with a couple friends has now expanded. So like you'd really only talk about a thing for so long before someone would eventually say, okay, but who is it a fight, Batman versus Superman? And then you talk about that for like 3 fucking hours, right? Or in the Dark Times, Goku versus Superman. But now it's on the internet. Now there's like just fucking threads and threads, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on, and it just gets ridiculous. Alfie, you and I just kind of snicker about this one because goddamn, every month with the Dragon Ball Super chapters, people are outraged about it because of one expectation or the other or the next one.
If you I know Matt, Steve, you guys probably see like the out things of it, right? Like the outskirts of it, because of just.
I'm so scared to directly interact with Dragon Ball Twitter. I stay so far
Please
away.
don't do
I'm
it.
Terrified.
It's not worth it. It's a bad time.
If you want to talk about expectations in fandom being the worst thing of all time, I don't know why I didn't lead with this. Ian, you're fucking Nostradamus, fucking truthseer here, because like Dragon Ball fans, oh my god. Put up the name, type in on Reddit, Gohan, and the word expectations will come up 10,000-fold. If Vegeta doesn't land 2 hits on a villain in an arc, motherfuckers' expectations will be dashed as if you pissed off that dead mother's ashes. Like, oh my god. Like, it got so bad during the Moro arc, where literally, like, what Toyotaro will do, right, as like publicity, because like he's drawing the chapter like month to month. It's like he'll release like the first 3 pages as like a preview, and they're not even finished drawn yet. They're like sketches. It's like the sketch layer of his thing. It's just rough. There's no dialogue. It's all just like chicken scratch, effectively. And he'll release these as like, oh, hi, this is interact with the fans. You get a sneak preview at the chapter before it comes out, and they always end at a cliffhanger. So like, oh, I can't wait to see what the chapter's gonna happen. These motherfuckers, without any sense of irony, will release 20-minute videos complaining about these chicken scratch preview pages because, well, I can't believe he's just done this. He just killed off Goku. It's like, well, clearly it's a cliffhanger to make you read on. It's like, no, this is how it ends. This is exactly how it looks on the face of it, and I'm mad. Like, I thought preview synopsis comic page fans were bad until I experienced this level of sheer ridiculousness. Oh Lord.
Yeah, I'm scared of Dragon Ball Twitter. I don't go anywhere.
It's a dark place. It's a dark place. It's not a happy place.
There's like a casualty every week, man. Like someone deletes their account like every week.
Oh man, it's just I got this close to getting in on it because the fucking laziest teaser for the fact that there's going to be a movie next year was released this week. And Alfie and I are in an art server. And a certain Dragon Ball YouTuber who totally will not be named, and especially will not be named Mark, is in that server. And just I have all the notifications muted, but you get an ad every once I go in there, and I just, casually read through. It's like, oh no, fucking the if it's gonna be in 3D, it'll probably be lazy. It probably won't look good. They'll probably rush it, and it's gonna be. I'm like, y'all don't even know. Like, it's, first of all, it's not. Let's just be honest. It's not gonna be a fucking 3D Dragon Ball movie. They're not gonna do that. But like, just, you don't even know what you're talking about. Like, just they only do 3D because it's easier. No, trust me, as someone who animates 3D and it has like the slightest inkling of what I'm talking about here, 3D animation is not easier. It's just different. And I'm just sitting there like...
Mark always annoys the crap out of me because his videos are basically just like, this character had an arc, which is a reference to the idea that characters and stories should have arcs, and it's just the laziest and dumbest criticism ever. And he did a poll on Twitter after the movie announcement came out, asking like, if the Dragon Ball movie was entirely in CG, would you pay to see it? Which is, of course, a terrible way to phrase that question. And the answer was yes. Like, yes, won. And then he quote tweeted himself and said, "Seems like you're only alienating half the audience." I'm like, what? Really? You're gonna judge this entire movie's reception to something that has not been confirmed based on your measly Twitter following?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, even if it is in 3D, which again, I don't think it will be, I just don't think they'll do that. It's so funny. Like, there's literally Tramp says, oh yeah, we're gonna do something new and exciting with the visuals. They're probably just like they're gonna change art styles again, which they did with Broly, and suddenly everyone loved it until they're already complaining about it because Dragon Ball fans are trash. But just it's gonna become something else, or they're doing more Shintani and they're letting him go more ham. Like, has anyone like even considered that option? like what if the Broly movie was like, all right, you can do your cool stuff, but like, just tone it down a little bit. I don't know if people are ready for it. And then the whole internet's, oh, we love Shintani. And it's like, all right, fine, now you can go ham, Shintani. Like, that's my theory. That's my expectation. That's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be the most Shintani-ness to ever Shintani.
Hey man, You're speaking my language. Can I get a couple more Shintanis in that sentence just so I can really nut?
I mean, sure. Like you can Shintani me in the Shintani if you Shintani my Shintani there. You know.
Beautiful. Do we have any? Do we have any other general thoughts?
General thoughts?
On this, boys.
General Thoughts is the guy who like that. I'm gonna make a TikTok account. I'm gonna call it General Thoughts.
I will say
No, this reboot of Zod you've made, Ian, is pretty strange. General Thoughts.
Sorry, I'm laughing at my own joke. Alfie's yours sucked, but mine was really funny.
it does kind of suck when like your reaction or expectation to something doesn't line up with the overall fan community in one way or the other. Like something comes out, everyone hates it, but you love it, or something comes out and everyone loves it and you hate it. So that either puts you in a situation where they're going to not continue to make that thing that you love because everyone else hates it, or they are going to continue to make that thing that you hate because everyone loves it. So that can be a not fun situation. Was really the only other place my brain went. But that's
yeah. You gotta sometimes you gotta hang on to the thing and be like, this is why we can't have nice things. Like, it does really suck when like the take you've been waiting for comes out and it's like just hugely shat upon. Like you're the only one who liked it. That's how I feel about the Green Lantern.
Wonder Woman Earth 1 going on.
A little bit. That one's. I feel like people are coming around a little bit. The one I have that probably the most with it, and I'll probably be. This will be the hill I die on. This will be the hill they bury me on. Is the Green Lantern movie costume is the best interpretation of the Green Lantern costume we've ever had, and I will die on that hill.
I will funny still... about that. Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
Like I said, I'm gonna die on the hill that I always die on, which is Age of Ultron. Is the best superhero movie of all time.
Bizarre hill to die on, both of y'all, but fair.
The funniest thing about your thing, Ian, is like talking about like fan expectations. Is like, that was such universally revealed. What a shit idea! What a shit take! We're never gonna do that again. You know what the new movement is? We really want to see Zack Snyder's Jon Stewart with that fully CGI costume again. It will look so good. Like, there's such fucking. You're exactly right. It's exactly like how it's like decided upon if it would be good or not. And because we haven't seen what the CGI Green Lantern looks like in the Zack Snyder shooting in his backyard with a green screen. Therefore, it must be the greatest thing of all time. Where, you know what? It'll probably look exactly the same as the movie, maybe just a little bit better texture, because that's how passage of time works. And you'll put them side by side, Ian, and you'll be like, this is the same thing I've always been saying. And you'll get many replies as, no, actually, the Green Lantern one looks like shit.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. Like, if they were to do it, like... I imagine, based on the little, peak we get of Kilowog, they'd probably go for, like, a less... They'd go for a more cowardly take, because Zack Snyder's a coward, and they'd go for, like, the armor thing, as opposed to, like, the biological second skin kind of look to the Green Lantern movie costume, and people would pick that detail out and be like, see, this is why it's better, and be like... Okay, but that's not what you were complaining about. You weren't complaining about the costume looks creepy. You kept complaining about the costume looked fake and unbelievable, and they should have just gone with practical costume. And so, which one is it, you fucking bitches? So anyway, I think that's a good place to end things on. Does anyone even fucking know whose turn it is anymore?
No.
That's not happening. I think we got to this point like last year, yeah, as well.
You did this one, Matt did last one.
Yep. I did review last time, you did discussion this time.
Alfie was before that, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I was the Mixel, I was the self-inserts.
Okay, so self-insert, Superman and Lois, expectation. Okay, so it's my turn.
Yay! Go Steve for actually watching the show. We're proud of you.
Let's see. And I'm doing a review topic, right?
Yes.
Yes, review topic. Okay.
Steve picked the Broly movie.
Dude, I will happily watch that again. And contribute fucking nothing and being like, I watched the original Broly movie when I was a kid, and this one's good too. Yay!
As much as I would love to pick the Broly movie because it's fantastic, all of the Broly movies are fantastic, including the one where he's just a big pile of goop. No, I'm kidding. I want to review a comic because I feel like I haven't talked about comics as often as I would like to talk about them. Let's review Daredevil End of Days.
Is that just like a single trade? What are we talking here?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's just a mini-series. Ian, you already have this. I sent it to you for your birthday or Christmas one year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I read that. My expectations were very low, and yet it still managed to disappoint.
Next
Because
time,
it's Marvel.
Geeky gentlemen, me and Steve will eviscerate Ian while Matt watches gleefully from the sidelines. If you donate us just $5.99 for the pitchforks, we'll send you our own chunk of him that you can keep in your little coal and remember him by.
I'm very, very excited.
In 20 years, his daughter will find all of them and try to resurrect him.
Frankenstein's Ian. But yeah, End of Days miniseries by Brian Michael Bendis about basically the world after Daredevil has died, essentially. It has nothing to do with his main run, so it's just like it's its own one-off thing. Pretty easy to get access to. It's always been in print as far as I can tell, and obviously you can probably find it online pretty quick too.
Cool.
You know.
Alright, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the champion of the oppressed. Ha! Suck my dick, Matt!
I'm the disappointing erotica lover.
Man, this erotica, I was really expecting to just like fucking nut all over the place, but it's just, yeah, I can tell their heart's not in it anymore. So just.
And I'm just slowly exiling myself from this conversation.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.